Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Yvonne here from My Halal Kitchen. And we are supposed to be interviewing Diana Sabrain of One Agrix, which is a really cool global digital trade platform. But she's having some technical issues on her side at the moment. So I'm just going to be, so that my link doesn't expire here on StreamYard, I'm going to just get started and talk to you guys for a bit until she comes back on. She's joining us from Zurich, Switzerland, so it's late at night, and maybe the internet is going crazy because the World Cup is on, and we didn't realize that this is this exact time of the Morocco match. So I'm wearing red to support Morocco. But yeah, so we're waiting for her. She's a really interesting, lovely young woman, CEO of her company, and she goes all over the world talking about this trade platform that she has for halal food supply. And she connects buyers with sellers. It's really cool. She's really busy. So for us to get this interview scheduled was just a miracle because we've been trying to do it forever. And either one of us was traveling or one of us was sick or time zone differences. And so I appreciate all your patience. At this time, I think I'll just, wait for her and open it up to questions that you guys might have about anything food related, cooking related until she comes on. And it might sound like it's like an issue that the interview, like the topic of the interview, it might sound like it's like too tech for everybody, but it's so cool and interesting. And food supply, food security really is the topic we're going to dive into, and it really affects everybody. And so that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this, because I think sometimes as consumers, we can get just so caught up in the different products we have available, especially in the US. We're just so spoiled with so many different options for things. But have any of you guys noticed that during the pandemic, there were things that were just like typical and common that we just took for granted were not available? I just remember going to stores for like coconut flakes. And I went into a particular store just assuming that I'm going to go find coconut flakes, and they weren't available. And I was asking, someone at the store, like, do you have these? And, are they in the back or something? And the lady went and checked, and she came back and she said, oh, they're sitting at a port in LA somewhere on a boat, and they're stuck and they can't get in. And I thought, this is supply chain issue. This is, whatever structures were broken in the supply chain during the pandemic for what lots of reasons that Diana can probably get into a little bit more. But those are the things that affect us and are still affecting us. I went in, that was during the pandemic. And then later on, maybe just a couple of weeks ago, I went for something. I can't remember what they were, 2 ingredients that were pretty common, but I couldn't find them anywhere. I'm trying to remember what they were. Eggs. We didn't have any eggs at one of the stores. And then it was Costco. Costco was totally out of eggs. I thought, okay, it could be like because it's baking season, but never in my whole life have there ever been, a lack of eggs. And, it goes back to something I have been saying since day one that I started this My Halal Kitchen site, and I'll go on my soapbox about it. But, we have to appreciate the issue of food security and insecurity, and that has different meanings for different people, different countries, in terms of like large amounts of food versus like your own home food security. And I always say, we need to sometimes take things into our own hands in our own home economy and grow your stuff. I'm not saying, everybody has to become a farmer. We need to support farmers for what they do and the massive amounts of products that they bring to us. But, small scale farmers are really important to support. But also, we can grow our own little herbs. I have like potted tomatoes. Okay, yes, I'm in a warm climate, but whatever you can do and where you live is important for your own, food security. So I can't wait to get into this topic with Diana. She's back. Okay, so let me see if we can get her in. Diana, salam alaikum. Oh, can't hear you. I think it might be your settings on your computer. Do you want to do this from your phone? Want to try that from your phone? Okay, we'll hang up from your computer and call me, join back in with from your phone and let's see if that works. Because I don't think I can do anything about the settings here. No, I can't do it from my end. Okay, so do you mind? Do you mind trying it from your phone? We had a difficult connection, but maybe on StreamYard it will work. So we'll wait for you. It happens sometimes. It's okay. We have to just be patient. So yeah, very interesting topic. And that's why I'm constantly showing my garden, my balcony garden, my, seeds or seed sprouting or whatever I'm doing, because there are so many things that we can do instead of freaking out, instead of getting depressed or getting demotivated about how expensive things are. We have to sort of remember that people have survived a lot of things in terms of pulling back on resources. I take a lot of example from my own grandparents who, on one side came from Sicily, the other from Puerto Rico, and they both told stories of times when things were, really rough. There were, scarcities of things, and they got creative. I mean, there's a whole interesting concept in Italian cooking called cucina povere, which means like sort of like poor food, peasant food, and that's where some of the best dishes of Italian food like came out to be. So we'll talk about that another time. Diana's back. Let's see if we can hear her now. Diana.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Okay, it works.
My goodness, I apologize to everyone, man. That this is really oh, correct. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I've been chatting and just talking to everybody or myself. I don't know which one. But I introduced you briefly and was talking a little bit about One Agrix and what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But let me formally introduce you, Diana. Thank you so much for coming. And you are such an inspiration to me for many reasons. You're a woman, a Muslim woman. You're CEO of your company, One Agrix. You travel around the world doing what you do, but you're also just always talking about really important topics around food security. So I'm going to let you expand on who you are and what you do. But thank you so much for making time to join us in your busy schedule. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sister Yvonne. It's so nice to join everyone here. Thank you for inviting me in this show of yours. So now I would talk a little bit about One Agrix. So One Agrix, what we do, we are a global digital trade ecosystem, and our focus is in agricultural and faith-based food products in B2B trade. And when we say faith-based, specifically, we are doing halal at the moment. And it is a market which interests us not only commercially, but for me as a Muslim woman, I think it's very important for us to have representation in that space as well. Yeah, exactly. So, many people, many entrepreneurs can open a food business, but when it comes to faith-based, it takes a Muslim to understand, like, okay, what are the requirements, what is needed in the supply chain. We would know better, and it's our obligation anyway. So that's the reason why we decided to focus on a niche. And is it, every time people say halal is a niche, I go like, but it's like a 2 point something trillion niche. It's a huge niche. It's an economy on its own.
Well, you're right, and I do see from having gone abroad and being, for example, in Turkey or other parts of Europe where halal is seemingly more understood or more widespread. Mm-hmm. When I come back to the U.S., I feel like the idea and concept of halal has an understanding. Most people think of it as like the food truck business or Middle Eastern food, but in the global sense, it is so much more than that. And that's sort of the world that we met in, and
yes.
The world that you're You were putting a lot of airplane miles under your belt.
No, I've good supporters in this journey, and also you're right. Islam is about inclusivity and diversity, and I think what the West do not understand, and we can see this, right, is that they think that halal only means Arabic food, Turkish food, Persian food, and honestly, there's Chinese halal food, for
Oh,
example, which is part of, yeah.
Italian halal now. I mean, like it's something that was like the whole premise of my halal kitchen was exactly what you just said. Bravo.
Yes.
Yes, we need more people talking about that.
Just that there's so many variety of food that represents halal food. In fact, all of us, I mean, Muslims, we represent so many shades of colors, and I think that needs to be appreciated. And so this is where, for us, for you, you're doing an amazing job. You really go through the consumer side of things, but for us in B2B, it's interesting because when we deal with businesses, when we see inquiries, you would see the common spices when it comes to F&B establishments, right? They would want spices for kebabs. For example, in Europe, that is really popular. And I'm like, no, why are you only buying kebabs? There's so many other halal food products, food ingredients that you can, yeah.
Isn't that our job though? Like, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we do is to there's such a learning curve.
Yeah,
We're sort of
exactly.
in that realm of education. That's why we're here today to talk about what you do because it is so important. But you're not only just dealing with B2B, you're actually teaching these businesses that you encounter a lot more about halal than meets the eye, right? I imagine the meetings are really interesting that you have with lots of businesses about halal.
Oh, I can tell you at the first instance, they will be surprised. Oh, halal is not just halal meat. I would go like, no, there's
So,
halal packaged food products. There's halal.
right? Yes,
Yes.
yes. For consumers who don't realize the packaging, a lot of times plastics, for example, are sprayed
Yes.
with sealants or things
Yeah.
that could be made from lard, pork.
Yeah.
So people don't realize that everything is pretty complicated, and there's so many moving parts when one product that is as natural as can be, but then it gets to a packaged good, and it's like there's the conveyor belts, there's the packaging, there's the handling, and some people might say, "Oh, that's just too complicated," but that's why you do what you do. That's why I do what I do to kind of, bring it to the consumer fully certified. This is halal. It's okay. That's the job of the people in the industry to bring that to the
Yes.
consumer and make it easier. Right. So what is was that your why? I mean, what was it inside of you? I always try to get into the heads of entrepreneurs. Like, what was it that you said? Because this is not your first business that you've started. So
Mhm.
what is it that drove you to want to do this particular business?
So it's quite an interesting story. So I have always believed in mentorship. So early in my early 20s, I actually met a very kind 70-year-old mentor. He is the how do I say this? He is I won't mention the company name, but it's a Fortune 500 company. But he was the early board of directors of that company. It is in commodities,
Okay.
soft commodities. And so there was this. I was learning as I seek mentorship with him because my interest has always been trading, has always been commerce, and economics. In fact, I went on to study that. So basically, what happened was this. So we were on a trip in Vietnam, and it was to work on a rice deal. And I think I tell this story so many times that I hope I'm not replicating it in every interview. But
Yeah, I
so
haven't heard
basically,
it.
so basically, what happened was it was a 3 hour car ride into a rural area.
I love
Three
those.
hours car ride back.
Wow.
I don't mind the car rides. It's not the car rides. I was thinking the whole journey. My goodness, this is how tiring it was to procure something which is so essential, which is rice. How
Yes.
it's so disconnected the farmers are to the supply chain. So it's not just on the farm. You see the farm, and then there's manufacturing and processing, and then there's the trading and marketing arm, and then there's the transportation. And
Yeah.
when I saw that, exactly, when I saw all that processes, I was thinking to myself, can't they digitalize? And till today, agricultural sector is one of the last sectors to be digitalized, and we all know that, because of the ways that people are used to trading, right? Distributorship models, warehousing, ownership of products. So there's so many things in B2B or B2G trade that is very, very archaic. However, having said that, I've seen in the last 5 years push, and especially Vietnam is doing really well right now in food standards, push to be the manufacturing hub, not China anymore. So interesting from that. So that was my why. And actually, what got me thinking was when I saw the farmers.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where it gets really painful. You saw the farmers, so I start researching, and there are millions of farmers in the world, and they are paid under $1. A lot of them are paid under $1. I do not want to misquote, but it's open in Google Scholar if you can find some research. It's a lot. It's more than 50%. So this is where it became a mission, right? Okay, so agricultural sector, how do we give back to the farmers more? Reduce the middleman. I do not like to say things like in cast in stone, like eliminate the middleman. People who say that, they have not been in trade. Let me tell you why. You can't ever eliminate the middleman. Why? Because sometimes it's language barriers. You need facilitators. Maybe call them a nicer name. Call them
That's what a broker does.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, and
that's true. It's still so necessary today. Yeah.
yes, what we want is to reduce the exploitative one. Those that exploit the farmers,
Absolutely.
take something for $1, sell it for $10, Yvonne. So it became that mission. And then when I saw it was a crowded space, agriculture, and then we found that I sat back and think, let's do halal. I think that would be a much. So it was halal and kosher at the beginning because we were thinking that, okay, merge the faith-based halal, kosher, vegetarian for Buddhists, right, into
Yeah.
one platform. Then we realized we can't. It's obviously we need to test the market first.
Yeah.
And so I believe that, our focus and my obligation being a Muslim woman should be in halal. And that should be the why more than anything else.
Well, it's you have to really be passionate about halal in this industry because you don't really see results quickly, typically. It's a very slow moving process, and relationships take a
Yes.
very long time to develop, and that's what we're all about, right? So one question I have about what you said was, so the digitization sounds great in theory, but do the consumers really then, is that why food gets expensive because of that?
That's a very good question. So now, there is digitization and digitalization. So digitization is basically is putting pen to paper to cloud. So
Okay.
what we see, and I can comment more on the B2B side because that's where we are more than the B2C, but then I'll make sense of the economics of scale there. Okay, so basically on the what we see is farmers needing to make their processes better. Now, this is where financing gets hard,
Yeah.
where by right, they shouldn't be struggling when it comes to, increasing their stocks or, getting loans for machineries to
Exactly.
increase their produce or manufacturing, halal manufacturing food products as well. Yeah, manufacturers, not just farmers. Sorry,
Yeah.
because just now we were
Very
speaking about
important.
farmers.
Yes.
Exactly. And what we need to do is to clean up that, digitize that, tell them that if you put things and data into proper record, what you do is you basically have all those documentations to prepare yourself for expansion, prepare yourself for emergency. Like for example, there's a trade that's happening and you need more stock, and or there's not enough stocks, right?
Mhm.
So that would be under the realm of trade financing, but we shall not elaborate on that. So
Right.
that's digitization, right?
Mhm.
Now, digitalization is obviously implementing, getting the processes better in trading. Like for example, if let's say the food manufacturer wants to increase, how do I say it? Verifying their products that they are real. It's not fraudulent. They put a certain code on the packaging, or they introduce certain traceability measures, then yes, there is a chance that the consumers might feel that okay, food start costing maybe 5 to 10 cents more. This is just an example. I'm not saying that it is 5 to 10 cents more. Now, then we have to ask ourselves as consumers this question: would you rather buy food which you know the story of where the food comes from? Let's say if your food manufacturer decides to actually implement those measures, and you pay 20 cents for a piece of salmon for your daughter, rather than you buy salmon, the same salmon, you have no idea where it's coming from, but you pay 20 cents cheaper. So this is where, as consumers, we got to ask ourselves, for the health and safety of our children, is 20 cents, 50 cents, or even $1 matter to us? So there's a shift now, and I was actually very, very heartened to read in a recent research that consumers are actually willing to pay until 20% more, up to 20% more, if, let's say, it makes sense for them, if, let's say, food companies increase their prices because they want food standards, food quality to be better. Having said that, as adoption grows with such digitalization or digitization measures, it'll be like the case of, back when the computer was built. It was so expensive. Not everyone could afford a computer, right? It's a luxury.
Yeah.
But now everyone can afford a computer. So what we want is to introduce technology for the betterment of consumers, not because we want to increase prices.
Yeah,
But that's an honest look.
that's a great overview, because I think we're at a really weird time in history where this social responsibility is also meeting us at the time of inflation, global inflation. So, people go to the grocery store, let's just be real, right? They're looking at, what can I get that
The
is
cheapest
better value? Yeah, they've got families to feed. So, but I do think you're right in that there's this transparency that people are demanding from companies. I think once I started my Hello Kitchen, that was like one of the first things, working with companies, I realized was that they really need to see where's the food coming from. They need to meet the owners. And that really works, because today, consumers can find out so much about a company, as they should, and that changed the game. However, at this moment in time, now we're up against the wall of inflation, and I can see it, that there's a little bit of push and pull there. So what you're saying is kind of giving a solution for both of those issues, which is really interesting.
However, also sometimes it's market forces, right, to the logistics of things. So it's not that the food manufacturers want to increase pricing, and I feel for them, and I could say it because we deal with them, and they said that, that, Diana, we are not trying to increase prices, prices for consumers. What we want is to actually try to also make a living on their end. So on their end, I try to be empathetic. Our team tries to be empathetic when they wanted to change pricing, and like, oh, we need to increase the price of corn, the price of soybean, and we're like, okay, but it's inflation, and there's economic crisis right now. There's a food crisis, energy crisis. But you see, energy crisis means logistics suffers, and oil prices.
Yeah, the supply chain is really, yeah.
So
this is,
so it's yeah.
Go
yes,
ahead.
go, sister. There's a lag. It's fine. Go ahead.
So what is I'm curious, what does the name One Agrix mean? What is the meaning of Agrix? Why did you choose
So it's actually agricultural exchange.
So one platform, basically.
Yes, one platform, basically.
So tell us, okay, like for people who are watching, who are, mostly these are consumers. They really, this might sound high tech to people, but I think you've done a really good job of, having your website, shared your website, but your Instagram page actually is a very down to earth, grassroots kind of view of what you do. And I really love it, because you're really showing that you go to the source, and you're basically connecting farmers with buyers.
Yeah.
And that's just it's like a modern way of what was done before when, every producer of, let's say, tons of oranges. I think I saw one of your posts that said there was a farmer somewhere, I think it was somewhere in Africa, and you were basically saying, this guy has lots of XYZ, and you were looking for buyers. I thought that was so cool because it's just
Thank you. It's a
it
team's effort.
because we can get caught up in the technology of things, and it makes people feel really removed and disconnected from commerce. I experienced this when I was in Turkey. I felt like when you go to the market, the reason why people, I think, long for and romanticize the idea of food markets, because you're upfront and close with the people who produce it, and
Yes,
you
that's true.
feel in touch. There's no plastic stickers, there's none of that, so it feels very earthy and raw. And for some people, that's the experience of a time gone, like it's just not here anymore. And so when you come back, when I came back to the US, I felt so far removed from that experience, and it was a bit depressing, to be honest. Like, I go to the grocery store and I don't know, there's no person standing behind the oranges, there's nobody telling me about the apples, like where they came from. And it kind of it's an important shift in the mind, because you feel like, oh my God, I'm disconnected. I don't know where things are coming from. So I think what you're doing is ultimately fascinating, because you've got a little bit of both. You personally are so connected with the people that produce, but at the same time, you've got this global platform that brings everybody together. So I just wanted to kind of explain that from my experience in seeing you, working with you, and seeing what your business does, because it does matter to consumers how this happens and why prices are such, and why we need to support the farmers that are producing the things, and the fact that they struggle to get their products sold, just like anybody who runs an Etsy shop or a Amazon shop or whatever. It's the same concept, and you're helping sort of move those sales along. So that's what I thought was really interesting. So sorry, I just wanted to kind of say my piece on that, because I feel it's you're also doing something else very important, and that's on the topic of halal and sustainability. And you said once that the two are not mutually exclusive. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yes. So we hear a lot of the ESG movement. You hear a lot about, things have to be UN SDG,
Yeah.
with the UN sustainability goals. And when we saw that, we already have the Maqasid al-Sharia. We know this, where we have to be connected to the environment. We have to protect the environment, as we run our business in a very fair and transparent way. I think that's important. And for me, my conversations with my late father has always been surrounding that sustainability. It's just that now it's like a new age term, right? People are making it very modern, but in Islam, it has existed since since before. So for us, why we believe that halal and sustainability go it go hand in hand is because, firstly, when you deal with halal, it has to be according to the rules and regulations, and obviously depending on different regions, you have different expectations of what constitute a halal product, how you can halal certify. I won't get into certification because obviously that is for the experts to do. So, and why sustainability? Okay, now in the case of the food products that we have, or the farmers that we deal with, even though some people don't classify agricultural, like when they ask, oh, so is agricultural products halal? I say yes, as long as it doesn't go through processing, it is by default halal. Vegetable, tomatoes, they are halal. So what does sustainability has anything to do? I said the treatment of the farmers. How do you treat the farmers? Are they paid better, fair wages? And Islam has taught us that we need to take care of them that way. So sometimes as consumers, I feel bad now. So back then, I always say that, there's an increase in price, 20 cents for tomato now. But then my perception changed when I knew that they're not even earning much. The plate, when you look at your plate and you see, it's like, oh my goodness, what are the farmers earning? And then I kind of like, okay, swallow it, and I eat that 20% more tomato, and understand the supply chain is way beyond than what we think it is. It's not as simple as that. Of course, if let's say it becomes criminally, fraudulently high, $5 increase, then you should start questioning, is that brand
Right,
of
right.
food product? Yeah, so that's different.
Yeah, I feel like we always need to really thank the farmers who are doing, especially the ones who are giving us food that is free of chemicals and pesticides. And, how many of us have time to grow things? I mean, I'm always encouraging
Exactly.
people to grow herbs
Yeah.
and things, and
Yeah.
I have tomato plants that that just grew by accident because I threw a tomato in the dirt, and it's like it's taking almost a year for that plant.
Yeah, long time, bro. Yeah.
So I get it, but that's also why I think people should grow stuff to appreciate how difficult it is to
Yes.
get. And people say, "Oh, it's not worth it because you only get, so many tomatoes." Well, yeah, that's the whole point.
At that point, yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
whole point that it takes a lot to get, and also the animal welfare. I mean, this is a very big thing in Islam,
Yes.
but we
Yeah,
don't
it
talk
is.
about it as much as I think we should. I know the concept of vegetarianism. I know a lot of vegetarians who say they stopped eating meat not because of the health benefits, but because of the way animals were treated. And I thought this is a very good point, right? But how are we solving the problem by just not buying it? We really need to solve the problems by, making the systems better, right? And making sure that there isn't that corruption of, treatment of animals and things like that. That gets into animal welfare and all of that. But I think when it comes down to commerce, the whether there's business or not, or the dollars are flowing, that actually does make changes, right? When money doesn't flow, people pay attention, and then sometimes that's where changes happen, necessary changes happen. You probably see things like that all the time.
Yes. So we have to look at things as an ecosystem.
Yes.
Now, if we don't look at things in an ecosystem, what happens is there'll be a breakdown in the supply chain. For example, if consumers, now the thing is, of course, honesty and transparency has to be there. Now, if let's say it's also the onus on the buyers, on the suppliers, and on the manufacturers to also communicate with the consumers more and say that, hey, we are increasing our price, but this will be temporary because oil prices has increased, so logistics will be expensive. Things like that, simple
Right.
terms. You don't have to get into like the details of, okay, it costs XYZ cents or whatever more.
Right.
So consumers would be more open and, okay, let's it's an ecosystem. We want tomatoes. Sorry, referencing tomatoes a lot, but it comes to my mind today. You want tomatoes, and we are not going to grow tomatoes 20 cents extra, and the farmers could also have a decent living, right? Six
Right.
months later, the economy improves. Now it is the owners and the integrity of the farmer to say, hey, we can go back to normal pricing because
Right.
now situation is better. So I think it's an ecosystem. A lot has to do with communication. And I always have this view that, war happens because of two things, love and lack of communication. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
always,
All
if you
drama
look
and
at,
tragedies happen
yes,
because of those two.
exactly.
Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true. Yeah, and speaking
Yeah.
of that, the war in Ukraine, really, the world did not understand that
Mhm.
Ukraine was this hub of wheat production and sunflower oil and things like that. And I
Yes.
mean, I remember I was in Turkey over the summer, and the whole sunflower oil thing was a big deal because there's apparently,
Mhm.
the sunflower comes from Ukraine. So it was just fascinating to see that that total real world application of the flow of food and food goods, and how this is something, if you're in the food industry, like, I've been in this for a long time, so if we kind of understand, but when consumers are starting to be aware of it, then that this is something that is being, talked about often in the news. And I hope that this will be a catalyst for change in the sense, because once consumers know, they pay attention with their pocketbooks, right? They either
Of
buy or
course.
don't buy, and things like that.
Yeah.
And when we start complaining about the prices, things have to be adjusted. Economists get
Yes.
involved, governments get involved. So in a way, I think the world has sort of woken up to the fact that we can't take for granted, particularly in the US, because we are very spoiled with how much consumer goods we have here, that hey, there are things that aren't available in the stores as they used to be. Before you came on, I was talking about that, the fact that over the pandemic, I encountered many items at the stores that were used to be there that weren't anymore, and they're stuck in ports in LA. Or they don't even know when they're coming in. You know, all kinds of weird things you would never think you would hear about, but we are hearing about. So that's a huge change we're seeing in our lifetime. And do you think that the future looks bright for food security, or like in your space, because that's what you
Okay.
please address the
Uh-huh.
food security issue. That's so huge.
Okay, before, that's a really huge topic, Yvonne,
It
food
is.
security, and highly complex.
It's
And
highly
food security,
summarized.
yes, yes. So, okay, so now food security, now before we address food security, there's something nagging that I needed to say in response to what you have mentioned earlier. Now, yes, we talk about unavailability of certain of our favorite foods, or even staple food products. But at
Yeah.
the same time, if all of us are honest with ourselves, we are also contributing to a lot of food waste.
Oh, totally.
And
Yes.
this is where we are complaining about food prices. We are complaining about, oh, our favorite something is not up on the shelves, staple food, but then food waste. What are we doing about that? We can always repurpose food, and we can always find creative ways of cooking them. Yes,
Yes.
okay. Maybe this few months we have to tighten our belts in household, and this is my personal opinion. It's nothing to do with one Agrix, right? But this is something which I wanted to get
I'm
across.
I'm in agreement with that.
Yes. So while the market stabilizes or tries to correct itself, I think all of us could also at the same time be proactive and look at, okay, what food is available in the cupboards right now? What can we buy? And if
Absolutely.
you look at the grocery stores, those that are near expiration date, rather than they have to throw it away, it's regulation. It's food regulations that you can't keep it unless you donate it to charity
Which
um,
that's
organizations. So that's one thing I wanted to say. As much as yes, okay, we are thinking about food pricing
yeah,
soaring and things like that. Think about the food that we already have and the food that's near expiry that we can be. As you say, we want to talk about UNSDG big words, but I think it starts from home.
I
I
said
believe
the
that.
exact thing before you
Yeah.
came on, because I was talking about how, well, first of all, this is a blip in time. I think
Yes.
the world has never seen such luxury of food, really. I
Yes.
mean, a historian
Exactly.
could probably verify that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I mentioned, my grandparents came from Sicily on one side and Puerto Rico on the other.
Yeah.
They never experienced the amount of food that we have in the US. In fact,
Yeah.
Italian cuisine is there's something called cucina povera, which is it's called like the poor man's kitchen, basically. But some of the best recipes came out of the simplest ingredients, like pasta, cheese, a little bit of
Yes.
milk, maybe, or a tiny bit of olive oil with pepper and
Yes.
salt.
Yes.
Ingredients, like basic ingredients, garlic, olive oil, salt. But they're like the most popular, most tasty cuisine. I mean, and people survived on this, and people live to be very old, healthy, long, lives to talk about this, to tell us about this. So I think when we understand what to do with food, how to cook it with like minimal ingredients, I think it empowers people a lot to not be so
Yes.
stressed or anxious or freak out about,
Yes.
we don't need to have a million ingredients in our pantry. I do, because I do that for work, right? I have,
Yes.
because I
Yeah.
always think, do people really think they need all of this? Like, I want to make sure that I
Yeah.
don't send that message, but really the best food is usually the simplest from all cuisines, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And local,
Yes.
whatever grows locally. Like, I don't need
Yeah.
coconuts if they're not growing here. That's fine.
Yeah.
I can do without it.
So Yvonne, I just want to apologize if everyone is getting giddy. I'm moving my phone because I'm like trying to like use my arm muscles to hold my phone
Oh,
up
no,
because of
no,
the laptop. I don't
no,
know what's wrong with it.
that's
So just wanted to apologize in advance.
no,
Now
you're
you talk about food. Mhm.
go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Yes. So now you talk about food security.
Yeah.
Now, when people think about food security, they always think in a super macro level, right? Oh, okay, food security for my country, food security for my communities. But then, when we take a look at the communities part, this is where food insecurity could really happen for faith-based, which is I'm very passionate about this faith-based communities,
Hmm.
because when a country talks about food security plan, often they don't realize they need to cater to also certain faith-based communities. Why?
Hmm.
Like the halal community, the kosher community. So in
Yeah.
Canada, a few years ago, what happened was one of the largest kosher beef plant had to close down because of reasons, and I think they were investigated for certain food allegations. And so what happened was overnight, the kosher community is food insecure. What beef do they eat? There is no kosher beef. So
Hmm.
that is a huge gap there when food security plans are in place, frameworks are in place for countries. Now we have to look at it at a holistic perspective.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to
Many
to, to
moving
say
parts.
that yeah.
There are many moving parts to food,
Yes.
processed food.
Sorry,
Right.
Yvonne is like lagging also sometimes, so I apologize. But I'm in Dubai. I'm not in
Oh,
Zurich.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, so
I get confused about where you are sometimes. It's like, where in the world is Diana?
it's almost midnight now. But I really wanted to do this with you.
We're gonna wrap this up. Let's just say
No, you don't have to wrap it up. I'm just saying. I'm not complaining. I'm just
two more topics I want to get into. One is food fraud, and the other is about the GCC countries and halal. So, can you address a little bit about food fraud? Because we talked about food security, but fraud is a thing that I will say this. Okay, I'm just going to say, let's play devil's advocate for a moment. I get a lot
okay.
of people who's talked to me about, yes, I understand halal is important, whatever. But what about all the fraud that goes on? And this is something that we can't ignore anymore. I'm not saying it's just halal. All over the world, all different uh, types of food niches and everything. I mean, it happens all the time everywhere.
Yes.
But in
Yes.
the context of your work, what do you see and what is being done about that in the halal space or otherwise? Like, can you just address that?
Yeah, so this is really interesting because it's timely, and that's the reason why I'm in Dubai. So
Mhm.
yesterday, after 2 years of 3 years of vision, 2 years of really hard work and really keeping it under wraps. So one Agrix and our ecosystem partners actually announced the world's pioneering and comprehensive halal digitalization pilot. So what we demonstrated was full end-to-end traceability, transparency between the UK, one of the UK's 100-year-old hill farm finest, and traveling all the way to Dubai
Okay.
in a restaurant. And we had VIPs that attended. We had the press, and they could see how we swapped the DNA, how they could check via their a special code, which is not QR code because QR code can be counterfeited. So this is
Oh, wow.
totally anti-counterfeiting technology. Yes. So there's a lot of awareness and hype that goes around blockchain, goes around the QR codes, which really annoys me because we know technically whatever that is being claimed, a lot of it is hype. So for a good few years, my team and I knew that okay, we needed to collaborate to push market forces, right? And so we worked together with really amazing technology companies, and I think it's also very Islamic of us to collaborate and walk the talk and not want to win it on our own. So, in a business perspective, that was something that we, and me personally, I wanted to demonstrate that for us to solve food system issues, we need to collaborate. Now, what really triggered us as a team is when we saw 2 years ago a Bloomberg article about halal meat fraud. And it's really a slap in our face to communities. I was really embarrassed because it's on Bloomberg. It's not on some small publication,
Yeah.
and it makes us look like a joke. And enough already about Islamophobia, right? And now we have to deal with us being like, oh, okay, there's halal fraud in Islamic society. There's fraud in halal certification bodies. There's fraud in XYZ. And I'm being honest, and the industry knows I'm a straight shooter
Reality,
about this.
but it needs to be
Yeah.
addressed and changed. Yeah.
So when we came up with that pilot, we showed the numerous technologies and numerous ways that are needed to be implemented across the board in the sector, in the different stakeholders. So food fraud can be addressed by increasing traceability,
Yep.
and it could be different types of traceabilities, from data protection, from serialization, from DNA samples. It really depends on
Mhm.
how much traceability. But let me say this, it is not something which can happen overnight.
Right.
We still need to encourage manufacturers and farmers to adopt it. I'm
Right.
happy to say that people are open to it because, like Hill Farm Finance, Brother Usman, he sees the potential and he sees the importance. He said that, I am providing food for my ummah. That's literally what he said. And he said across humanity, and he doesn't want to be, he doesn't want to answer to our maker next time that his food is fraudulent. So he
Well,
wants, yeah.
this is
So
something that non-Muslims can appreciate a lot. And I know this from personal experience that when I wrote
yes,
my book, My Halal Kitchen, and I talked about, what's in your food, that was like the basic topic of the book, that a lot of Muslims kind of assume they understood what halal. I understand halal. I don't need that. But what they didn't
yes,
understand, what I was trying to address, was that there are so many minute things that can be in our food. And yeah, do we have to pay attention to the minute things? Well, those things add up when you realize what is possible that can land in your food. And it's not always just pork. There's lots of other things that are not just maybe not halal, but that are kind of gross. And with people that I talked to who were non-Muslim, who were receptive to this idea of transparency in halal, were just amazed that halal pays attention to that, and that if they found a product that was halal certified, that they could be sure that it wouldn't have, maybe human hair in it or some kind of weird object that lands in their food that's not digestible, or, something crazy like that. So the traceability and transparency, I think, has a huge market potential for not just Muslims. I think any society could be interested in that, and why not, right? Um,
yes.
when a food outbreak, happens, what's the first thing we're looking for? Traceability, right? Do we find out where it stemmed from, right? Mad cow disease, how did they figure that out, right?
Yes.
Traceability.
Yeah, so food transparency is needed. It's no longer just something which is a new shiny technology. In
Right.
fact, US FDA has already the food traceability rule that's implemented, that certain food exports have imports into the country has to have certain traceability measures.
Yeah.
Australia already imposed it for meat. There's the EU Green Deal. There is a host of many regulatory requirement with regards to manufacturers, and I think the consumers will be happy to know this, that
Yeah.
they have to implement food
Right.
transparency measures. And the
Right.
reason is food defense reasons. If a country feels that it's threatened, and they don't know what, let's say, their enemies could. I know this a bit on the side, but this is something which I think consumers need to know as well. That food defense is when, if let's say a country doesn't know where the origin of food comes from, and then what if you're being shipped
Oh,
poisonous rice, for
bio,
example.
right? It's kind of like a bio war,
Biowarfare.
that it's
Exactly my point.
this is
So people,
this
yeah,
is why governments are involved in food security, not just for the
exactly.
safety of, like, if somebody gets, yeah, exactly.
Yes, but also in the food defense perspective. So
Yeah.
these are like some of the working points that One Agrix is working on, and people often think that, oh, you're just working on a cool thing, and I said no, not cool. You have no idea the meetings that we have, closed doors behind with certain governments as well, worried about, okay, we need to trace where the wheat comes from. Oh, we cannot have Russian origin, for example. Oh, we do not want to get our hands meddling between Ukraine and Russia. Sometimes it's like that. They don't want both sources to stay
Well,
neutral.
politics
And I'm
always
like,
play a
okay,
factor in this, right? Politics, international relations. That's why what you do is so fascinating to me, because it involves so many moving, interesting parts about, not just food, but like government and international relations. And you have to understand global affairs, because everything
yes,
will affect this food supply chain. Most people in America, we tend to, I think we tend to be pretty US centric in our news, and the rest of the world seems to be a little bit more international and global and paying attention. So
But Yvonne, you know, I love the US farmers. I've met some of them. They are amazing. They are amazing. They have a lot of produce. But then I read one article during the food crisis, a potato farmer had to squash his potatoes because in a certain regulatory reason, they're not able to sell it off. And it was very sad because I felt for the farmer.
there are
And I
issues.
met one. Mhm. Yeah, so the US farmers.
For forever, like he could close up his farm because of something like that.
Yeah. So I've always, you know, the tagline they say, "Make USA great again," right? That tagline. I believe it's the people that's amazing. The people are amazing. The politics, it's a bit like, yeah.
But yeah, American people, I think, yeah, we smile a lot and we're pretty optimistic overall.
Exactly. Yes.
But yeah,
It's amazing.
it has their ups and downs and things that need to be worked on.
Yeah.
But I think with food, I have to say, I think we are getting better here. I was surprised at how many great products we're starting to get, and like organic. People are starting to care. There's a lot of talk about the connection between diseases and food. And so this is a great, great change that we're seeing in the US. I'm really happy about that because I was quite worried. You know, that was one of the reasons I said, you know, I need to go to a food-centric place. But then I realized, like, even in places like Turkey or Europe, there's complicated issues that happen in every country that affect what gets on your plate. And when you don't understand the global nature of like global affairs and all, who can? It's very complicated. But
Yes,
in that stuff, you really go, oh my God, there's a lot going on here. So I tend to throw my hands up and say, you know, what can I grow myself? What farmers can I get the rest from? And I just want to cook and eat healthy. At the end of the day, I think that's what most families want is like, just tell me what I can eat that's healthy and put on my plate for my kids, my family. That's all we really want to know, right? So you're doing a lot of that filtering out process and helping the flow of this like stuck, you know, food chain that's been going on for quite some time. But I think
yes, we want,
right? It needed to slow down so that the kinks can be worked out.
yes, so basically it's a lot of vetting through from the B2B perspective so that when it flows to the retail side of things, flows retail down to consumers, the consumers can know that, oh, okay, right from the very top, from the B2B, from the food procurement sourcing side, what has been done has been vetted through, like, okay, do they have traceability? Are they safe for export into the US, for example? But then you know what America has, which I admire, is very strict regulations. Let me give an example. So we had one inquiry for milk powder from a US buyer to ship into the US. Now, FDA rule is super strict. You cannot import milk powder without going through a lot of documentations, a lot of hoops to overcome. And that is great because you know that exactly.
Yeah, and especially if it's used for formula for babies, that's a really big, yeah. Well, there's a reason why these rules are in place, and sometimes, you know, they can be seen as too strict or whatever, but you don't want to be in a place where there are hardly any measures on food safety and then be sick. That's, you know,
be sick is like your best thing. Die. And do you know the whole purpose of food traceability is not, as I've said, not a shiny thing to have. It's to ensure that the population do not get sick as one, do not get poisoned, do not die, because people die from food poisoning, Yvonne. If you look at the statistics, even a simple lettuce, you die from that.
You know, and this going back to the Islamic history of food safety. I know one of the first things I learned about when I was studying Islam was about back in the day when Muslims were, you know, looking at markets, and there were lots of strict protocols for meat vendors, for not just the fairness of charging people, but also that if somebody got very sick on food, there were very strict protocols for whoever was responsible for that food product. I feel like, I don't know where a lot of those rules have sort of,
I know, right? The honorable feeling, right? I believe that, when you feed people, it's such an honor. We need to really,
it is a
we need to take it seriously.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. That's why, yeah, this is all very. So I guess the last question I really have is it's about the GCC countries. This is interesting
Okay.
because a lot of our audience, they may be watching from GCC, not today because of the Morocco match, but
Yes, and I wanted to watch the match.
we're going to watch it after this, hopefully.
No, I was just joking. It's fine. This is
Yeah,
important.
you're in Dubai. It's probably going to be crazy tonight. You might not even see
Yes.
if Morocco wins. They'll be like nuts on the street. Inshallah, they will. Okay, so these are countries in the desert, right? They're not producing the amount of food in many other countries. So why are they net importers of halal foods? Why are GCC countries net importers of halal foods?
You're asking why they import a lot of food. I mean, for them, it's a food.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that why aren't they producing more? Is it just because
Okay.
they're in the desert? Is it just logistical? Is it just geographic? What is the reason? Because they're Muslim countries, and why isn't the production stemming more from these places? Is it just that?
Yeah. So the GCC and the OIC, two separate issues that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
So they are Islamic countries. So one reason is like what you said. It's a desert environment. But then for for some in the OIC countries, which are very agricultural rich, so that
Right.
becomes a regulatory issue, like standards that they don't meet, so they can't export.
Right.
So it's not that, and this is something which I want Agrix we're also working on. We want to encourage the OIC countries to trade with their other counterparts in the Gulf,
Mhm.
because they are as you say, net importer, right? But then it could be like a cross. I mean, it's sustainable. First, it's
Right.
nearer. That's one.
Right.
Second, you're supporting back
Mhm.
Muslim farmers, Muslim countries,
Yes.
and making their economies and GDPs better.
Right.
So but I am very optimistic. We Dubai, Saudi, in UAE in general, Turkey is trying to also push numerous bilateral trade ties between different Arab countries. Yes, in the
Just
Middle East.
makes
But then,
sense. It just makes
sorry,
sense. It just makes perfect sense.
yeah.
I mean, but why is it only happening now?
Politics. You see, it's always politics, even right to today. It
Yeah.
is still politics, and no one want to accept that, right? It's like, oh no, it's just bad business, or it's just business rivalry within the halal economy. The
Yeah.
fact of the matter is very political, very political. Like, oh, okay, who is the best halal with
Well,
this
let's go back
standard, for
to
example?
place. There are sort of old wounds from centuries of this. This is not a new game, right?
Yeah.
And people.
Well, yeah, it's not a new game, but it's an excuse, Yvonne. I'm an optimist. I believe that we can solve it, but
I have hope too. I feel like from the outside world, outside of the Muslim community, people might think, well, you're all Muslim, so everybody just gets along, but they don't realize how
that's
many
not true.
cultural differences, how many political differences there are, and it
Exactly.
shows up in what you just said. But I think that things seem to be changing a little bit, where people are realizing that we need to work together, and the best way to do that is through trade, right?
Yeah, and partly the reason why is because of our younger generation, the younger ummah.
Yes.
And for me, I'm in my early 30s. I'm not gonna give away my age, and it's not only me. In my team members, with the stakeholders that I meet, Muslim educated Muslims, increasing everywhere in the world. And when people always talk about migration to the West, they always talk about, oh, not so educated, right? And there's always that basketing of people, labeling of people, which is not
Yes.
true. If you look at the current, I feel even in the next decade, we will be contributors to economies
Yeah.
in the West as well,
Yeah.
and we will have not only Muslims' interests at heart, we humanity. In the Quran, God
Yeah.
didn't say only Muslims. God said for all humanity. So we are obligated to do
Absolutely.
good in a UN SDG, Qasid Masharia way of trying to contribute regardless of race or religion. That is
Yeah.
our way of Islam, and I think
Yeah.
it's not being communicated. And also, for me, and I know you don't want to touch about this topic, but I was reminded of it. It's the same, right? It's everyone's journey. For me, like people don't understand. Oh, you say you're a Muslim woman, but you don't wear the hijab. And I said, no, that's not the reason. It's because in Singapore, we are a very secular society. But then I still read the Quran. I still have a religious education every weekend. My parents made sure of it, and my mom only wore it in the last 5 years. So it's a journey, and
Yeah.
it's also the environment and country that you're in. So it's
Sure.
different. We need to respect each other.
I don't think you have to even explain yourself. I think that
Yeah,
that's a whole nother realm of topics that
yeah,
we as a community really need to dive into in terms of
yeah.
this idea of non-judgmentalism and also respecting the culture that people come from. I mean, I've been,
Yes,
I'm American, born and raised, but with an
yeah.
Italian background. Like, I love my culture. I love, but we don't have to give up certain things from the people, the culture we love, or what we grew up in. I mean, Islam is way less black and white than people sometimes make it out to be.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, no, that's
I think,
true.
we
And I
don't have
think
to be
food,
something we're
Yvonne,
not. Yeah.
and reeling back into the topic, food actually bridge people.
Yeah, exactly.
I
That
feel
was
like it's like football, right? Like football
yes,
now, FIFA World Cup
yes,
season, right? Like
yes.
it
No,
create
it's
bridges. So I really like it.
It's so true. It's so true. I recently I was at an event and it was for Mediterranean food and I was surrounded by I was the only Muslim there and the only one talking about halal and there was I was surrounded by Greeks and Italians and being Italian myself it was great to to kind of have that camaraderie of Mediterranean food and cuisine and so many
Yeah, that's nice.
overlaps and
Yeah.
then there comes this halal part and it's like really we're just two steps away from understanding. Most of them had never even been explained what halal is, but at the same time, you've got these countries in the Mediterranean, right? Morocco and Turkey and
Yeah, yes.
all the North African countries, but yet there's just a lack of PR. There's a lack of good knowledge. There's a lack of education. But once they tasted the food that I made, they were like, oh my God. They're like, this
Bless
is
you, Yvonne.
all Mediterranean ingredients. It's nothing weird, right? It's just as
Mm.
long as it's delicious and it brings people together, that is a game changer. And that's the communication I think we need. And I see what you're doing at One Agrix is also this table, this platform that is connecting people through food in just a different way. It's just a more commercial way, right? So you can either have it like physically at the table and eating and discussing or with what you're doing, but either one, both of them are very they're very big catalysts to the future that we want to see, I think.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And the conversations we have, it's always shocking, right? Like when
Yeah.
we talk to Western Western entities, like, oh, like there was this one incident when I said, do you know what halal is? Oh yes, halal is the meat and the slaughter. I was like, no, that's not
No.
halal. There's so many things that constitute halal, and you can't, as I said, don't basket things on label before understanding, right?
Yeah.
On and but then like what you said is only two steps away. After explaining, they're like,
Yeah.
oh wow, it's interesting, and oh, so you guys did it this way, and people are curious, and you break barriers. People
Yeah.
are able to understand that, okay, this is how halal is. This is what, and in a way, I do hope, and I'm optimistic, like what you said, that it will also bring back that spotlight of Islam, so that we could decrease. For me, it's about decreasing Islamophobia. The reason why I don't want Agrix is so that people think that is secular is not our heart and soul and mission is
Yeah.
to at one foot at a time to squash Islamophobia. It is true, because in our business
Oh,
conversations we do that.
I agree. That was my whole mission too. I really felt
Yeah.
like
Alhamdulillah.
I started my Hello Kitchen a few years after I was Muslim, but it was the Islamophobia was so heavy in my heart. And I thought, I can't deal with the politics. I don't understand everything that everybody's arguing about too. And there's a certain level of even Islamic theology that most of us can't, talk about beyond a certain basic stuff, right? Basic knowledge. And so I thought food was the best thing to
Yeah.
sort of bring in the
It's a good
conversation,
starting.
show our
Yes.
humanity, talk about food history. And when you really crack it open and you look at like the history of different parts of the world, different countries, we didn't have borders before the same way we do now, right? We didn't have, all these different country names. We were a little bit more regional. There were empires. So people's food crossed over. I mean, they serve a staple food in Sicily, Western Sicily is couscous because of the proximity to
Yes.
Tunisia. So it's like when we talk about those things, and then people, oh yeah, that's true, and then it becomes like you can just relax.
This is where you bond, right, with people. You break bread with them.
Bread,
Yes.
couscous or pasta. I don't know. It's all
Yes.
it's all our story is on a plate usually, and that's how we express ourselves. So I think, whatever way that you can find a purpose in this world, and I think you have definitely found yours. You're so passionate about what you do, and I'm so glad that our paths intersected on this topic of food.
Yes, Simone.
Because I admire what you're doing. I support
so much.
you 1,000%, and I can't wait to see what else you'll be doing at One Agrix and independently. So thank you so much for just spending your time. And it's late for you, so I don't want to.
It's fine. As you know, I'm very passionate. It's just that I just wish that we could tune in properly just now. Again, I apologize for that shortcoming, Yvonne. And also, likewise, I feel the same. I admire you so much as a sister in faith. It matters to me that everyone here, Sister Yvonne, she doesn't judge people. She's amazing. She really listens first, and I think that is something which we need to encourage: open dialogue, and at the same time understanding the other side. So thank you so much, Sister Yvonne. I hope there are more conversations with you. I hope the conversation here has been beneficial for for the audience. And if there are any questions, just feel free to contact Sister Yvonne and filter it or ask me. You know where to find me.
I'm going to post your Instagram, and do you mind if I post your LinkedIn as well? Because you post some interesting things there as well as for businesses.
Yeah, you can do both. It's fine. I'm good.
Okay, wonderful. Well, if there's not anything else that you want to share, I think we'll sign off, and then we'll hopefully, inshallah, do this again when there are more developments, and we can, just discuss more important issues to both of us. I think we have a lot that we kind of want to say in the future.
Yes. I hope the audience will find like, oh my God, what are they talking about? Like one moment here, one moment there. But Sister Yvonne, we have that kind of
It's informal. And we'll record this. It's being recorded, so we'll do the replay, and then all the people who were watching the game will watch us.
Thank you, Sister Yvonne. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.